What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Mountaintop Motivation Podcast. I am here with Tanya Goodall Smith, and today we're talking about her very first $100,000 year in business. This is a part of a series called My First 100K to help you, the new and aspiring entrepreneur, to learn how these entrepreneurs were able to reach that milestone of $100,000 a year. So Tanya, to get us started, can you tell us a little more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a branding strategist and designer. I'm the owner of Work Story Creative in Spokane, Washington. And I also work as a personal branding strategist for Brand Builders Group. That's something kind of new for me I'm a coach for them for personal brands. And basically I help self-employed service-based businesses with their branding, anything from choosing a name to, logo and style guide, writing copy, scripts. We do photos, videos, social media strategy, pretty much anything that has to do with making you look who you are as a brand. My company helps with. So
very cool. And you say self-employed service-based businesses. What's kind of the wheelhouse for you to work with?
So I like working directly with the owner, so it's usually a micro business is 1 to 5 employees in a business, which makes up a huge percentage of businesses in America, by the way. I can't remember the number. It's like 80% or something.
Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, what is it called? The SBA refers to anything under 500 employees as a small business.
Right.
But 1 to 5 is extremely different than 100.
Right.
I mean, by that definition, by that definition, Grant Cardone is a small business. By that definition, Grant Cardone is a small business because I think he has like 200 or something employees.
Right.
It's just kind of an interesting thing to think about that they say small business under 500, but yeah, the business who's a 1 to 5, very different than a 20 or 30 person business. And we can go from there. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So most of my clients are like lawyers or, psychologists, interior designer, it's a service-based business. And some of them do, I worked with people with, more like in the 20 to 30 or more employees. But for the most part, I'm working directly with the owner. We're planning out what they're doing. I don't have to answer to 5 different people on a board that all have their different opinions, which I did in my past career as a designer. I worked in the fashion and tech industry, and just got really burnt out on that, working with these giant corporations, and just really wanted to serve small businesses in my community. So I made a major shift when I made that change.
How much is you understanding? How much of your success would you put on understanding who that ideal client is and understanding their needs, wants, and desires?
Like 100%, I guess. It's really hard to market to someone or sell something to them if you don't really know what they need or, who they are and their problems and whether or not you have a solution for them. So that's the foundation of anything that I do for a client and that I do to market my own business, for sure.
Yeah. I just think that that's such a great thing because I look at so much of my audience, my audience is speakers, authors, coaches, those kind of people. And as great as that market is, what sometimes happens is people get in the loop of who their current connections are. And so they think, well, they've been a part of all these groups, they've gone to these networking events, they've done all these things. And so then their world is a bunch of other people like them. And then they go and try to do something like, like doing branding, like doing, just all the services that you provide. And they try to provide them just for other people like them. When they think about small businesses, they're looking at coaches, they're looking at those kind of things. But in reality, that market of people is a completely different market than, like you said, a lawyer, a psychologist, a financial advisor, someone like that who has, there's just a lot more money to go around when you're looking at someone who has, if they pay rent, they're in a different level of seriousness. If they're paying rent for an office, if they have an assistant, if they have high value hours that are in high demand. And then you look at that and it's so much easier to collect money from somebody who they have more money than they have time. And I think that that's a really, I was just really happy to hear that when you said who you were specifically working with, because I just think that it's a good example for people that get out of your current circle and start looking at what can you bring a value to people in the marketplace.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not serving other photographers. I mean, I teach photographers, but that's different. People who do my business aren't really hiring me. So, and yeah, you're right. Like most of my clients have a high ticket offer or ongoing clients, and they've been in business for a while. Usually most people hire me after, they know who their client is, they know how to sell it, and they want to take their brand to the next level of looking really professional and, kind of tightening up who they're marketing to. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, let's jump right into this. Tell us about your first $100,000 year in your business.
Yeah, so I've actually been self-employed since 2006, and every year my goal was to make $100,000, and I would never get there. I was always stuck at like 40, 50, 60, depending on the year. If I had a baby or something, it's the worst. But yeah, and so actually it was 2020 when everything was shut down. That's the first year I made $100,000, and it's because I added more things to my income stream, I guess. Like I couldn't be a photographer for like 3 months. Stuff was shut down. And so I created an online course for photographers then while I had all this downtime. And that added about $20,000 to my revenue that year, without even doing any paid advertising or anything. I just utilized my network and sold that course. And then I also was doing some social media management that was some like retainer clients that year. So that, had kind of guaranteed money, and I was able to make $100,000 that year. So
that's awesome.
And then last year I made 100,000 again too. So 2 years in a row. And I feel like once you get to a certain revenue, like you don't tend to go back. You're like, well, I know I could do it now. So I, just going to keep moving forward and set a higher goal. So
that right there is the nugget for people to learn. The people listening, that's the nugget that they need to take from it is once you get to that bracket, then you're just able to do it again. Even if everything fell apart, you think differently now.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with people who are making $1 million. I'm not making $1 million a year, not yet, but that's not where I'm at. And so I don't have that attitude, but I know that once I reach that, it's the 4-minute mile. It's the Roger Bannister 4-minute mile. All of a sudden, everything is different. So I'd love to hear, what did you learn from that first year, from that first 100K year?
Let's see, what did I learn? Well, number one, that I could do it. And I had a business coach that really kind of held my hand through it. She's like, cause there was a lot of uncertainty in that year. I'm like, well, I can't do this and I can't do this. And she really helped me keep that mindset of, if I set this goal, how could I accomplish it? A lot of people got really wealthy in 2020, mask manufacturers, hand sanitizer, who knows what else, like,
for sure.
We couldn't use that as an excuse. Just the fact that you can't leave your house or can't serve people one-on-one, what else could you do? So just learning that, being able to think outside of my limiting beliefs, I guess, which is something I've been working on for years, but
of course.
Yeah.
But
and then
I want to push pause on that right now. I am not interested in talking to those who are no longer working on their limiting beliefs, because I believe the biggest limiting belief is I no longer have limiting beliefs.
Right.
Because if I say I no longer have limiting beliefs, that means I've already reached as far as I can in my life. Sometimes I went to that seminar last year. I took care of I don't have any more. You go, interesting. Right. So you have made a decision that you have reached the pinnacle of your life.
Right. Yeah.
And I know that for me, I do what the people I spend the most time with are doing. And I'm intentionally spending my time around people who are growing. I don't want to spend my time around people who are stagnant or most likely moving backwards, because I will start doing the same.
True. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So the other thing, well, I created the online course and I learned so much from that. I did it in Kajabi. And so I learned how to create a course in Kajabi, set up funnels, the emails, all that. And now I've been helping people do that. So I'm creating them their brand, helping them scale beyond their one-on-one services. So that's kind of a new niche for me this year, because I took the time to learn how to do that for myself. So
isn't that fascinating how you
yeah.
can learn something and how really it sounds like 2022 and the disaster that it was at the beginning became something that was quite a blessing for you because it made you ask different questions. It made you look at things differently.
Yeah, totally. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing that. What do you think you could have done? You say you've been self-employed since 2006. What do you think you could have done to reach that 100K mark earlier?
Yeah, wow, I've learned so much through the years. Number one, raise my prices. It took me forever to rate. I started freelancing because the company I worked for when I moved asked me if I would continue working for them remotely, but not as an employee, right? Like I became a contractor, but I wasn't charging more than I was making as an employee, which now I'm like, that was so stupid because I have to bear all the cost of my, doing my business, paying self-employment taxes, which are ridiculous in Washington, all that stuff. So raising my prices for sure and not being afraid to name my price. Also moving away from a time for money model. I don't charge by the hour anymore. It's a package, and the faster I get it done, the more money I make for my time, basically, because my expertise, I've been doing this stuff for 25 years. So, charging for the value rather than the time that you're spending.
Yeah. So raising your prices, and then secondly, charging for the value instead of for the hours.
Yeah. Right. And then now I'm working on, delegating, like hiring for more stuff so that I can maximize my time, my earning potential with my time. That's what I'm working on. I've been working on that for a couple of years, just offloading tasks that I don't need to be doing. And it's hard. I've struggled to do that. I've always been the person who does everything. Don't really know how to systematize and hand it off. So I'm getting some help with that this year. And that's kind of the next step of going beyond just me doing everything. So,
what I really appreciate about this interview so far is that most people, they want to talk about all the things that they've got already, all the stuff they've already figured out. And, and it's great hearing you say that, like, well, that's where I need to go next. And I'm not there yet. And it's a challenge, and I'm learning and I'm figuring it out and I'm growing. And I appreciate that. I think it brings a lot of value to people.
Yeah. Right. In the course I teach for photography, I teach photographers how to do branding photography like I do. And that was feedback I got from a lot of people, because I am not like, I have all the answers, I'm making millions of dollars. I'm totally upfront. I'm like, this is what I tried, it didn't work. Here's what I tried, it did work. And same thing, like I don't have it all figured out. I'm still trying new things. That's what I teach my students. Like, you just got to try it and see if it works, maybe don't do this one thing because I already tried it and it didn't work for me, but it might work for you. So I'm pretty upfront and open to a fault sometimes.
Well, I think I don't know if that's to a fault. I think sometimes there might be issues that can come up because of it. But to me, I think that sounds really great. What advice do you have to someone who's just starting out in business?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I wish I had done some kind of mentorship with someone, or an internship. I did an internship, but it was a design internship. I wish I would have gone and worked for someone in a business capacity, just to learn more about business. Because I went to school to be a designer. I knew how to do that well, but I didn't really know anything about, profit and loss reports and taxes and all that kind of stuff, it's just taken me a long time to learn all of that through trial and error and reading books and taking courses and making mistakes. Basically, that's the the biggest teacher. But maybe the best advice I could give is not to be afraid to make mistakes. If you just a perfectionist, not willing to do things imperfectly, that will stop you from moving forward. And that, for me, that was a lot of what kept me small for a long time. I think I had all these great ideas, but then wouldn't take any action because I didn't really know how to do it.
I think that's really great. And what about for someone who kind of like where you were, someone who was already profitable in business, but for some reason has that hang up, has that spot, and they can't quite get to that milestone of that 100,000. Let's say they're at, like you said, 50,000, 60,000, or even 80,000. They want to make it. What advice do you have for them to be able to dial it in and close that gap to the finish line?
Let's see. Well, like I mentioned, my coach really helped me. I'm really an advocate for a business coach. I've had one for several years, and I've had different ones. Like I'll usually have one that helps me with a certain thing, and then I go to a different one that helps me with another thing. So, but in looking at what she specifically helped me do, I guess was just, set this goal and don't stop until you get there. And another thing she told me is you don't have to make $100,000 in January to December. What if you made $100,000 from July to July or so? Like that's $100,000 a year, right? That kind of changed my perspective a little bit. I was like, who says I have to start in January and measure it in that way? So that was a little, shift in perspective, I guess. And just because like you don't need to make, it's like 8,000 something per month.
$8,333.33
something like that.
Indefinite sense.
You don't have to make that every month. That was another thing. She's like, what if you made $20,000 in one month, and then in July while you're on vacation, you only made 3,000 or something? Like you getting out of that mindset of like, I have to have this paycheck of this certain amount of money every month to get to my goal. You could make $100,000 in 1 month, depending on what you're doing, and then take the rest of the year off. I guess, it just depends. So getting out of that mindset of I have to make a salary as an employee, you don't have to get to your goal in that way. It could be totally different.
Yeah, that is a great way of looking at things, that it doesn't have to look the way that maybe people think it's supposed to. And I think that the January to December calendar can really be a slave. When I talk about this year, a lot of times people think, oh, it's already March. That means I only have 9 months left in the year. So this year's a wash. So I got to be working towards 2023. And I think that's stupid. I think that your year is now. The next 12 months is the year. So now is the next 12 months. So you don't need to make up for it. Let's say you're having let's say you had a slow January and February, whatever. Now's the time. Like it doesn't matter. You can make it work. In all honesty, in my mind, for me personally, the year starts November 11th every single year, because that was the day that I was born. And so therefore, that's when the year starts for me. So it's all arbitrary. It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and speaking to that, like that attitude of like, oh, it's already March and I haven't met my KPIs or whatever. I think working with that coach, I think I was like $20,000 short, like November 24th or something. I was like, I'm never going to make it. And she was like, there's still a month and a half left. And so it just really pushed, even though it was Christmas. And I think I did like a big promotion or something, and I made it. I think I made like 100,000, like $2 or something.
Wow.
Like it was very like barely over the line, but I did it.
That's so awesome. What a cool thing that is.
Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting question. The answer is always, oh, I know exactly what it is, or it's that stumped me. I don't know what to do. But I like the answers that I get for this question. Tell me about a single moment that changed the trajectory of your business. Something that happened, some moment in time. Maybe it was an aha. Maybe it was a rock bottom moment. Maybe it was a moment where all of a sudden seemed possible. But what was one moment that really changed things for you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I started out just doing graphic design, basically. And then I had no kids when I started. By the time I was pregnant with my third, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like the deadlines and the stress. And like I told you, I was working with these big corporations and they expected things done, overnight. And I'm like leaving my kids watching TV all day and stuff. So I just like quit. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I just quit. Like I had this baby and just didn't do anything for a while, and it drove me crazy. It's like, I got to do something. So, but I'd had this idea for a while of offering photography to businesses, because as a designer, with the big corporations, I had great photography, but working with the dentists and all of that stuff, they never had good photos. And even if I told them, go hire a photographer, they'd get their wedding photographer or something, and they just wouldn't be appropriate for businesses. And so that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to be a photographer for businesses. And it just worked a lot better for my schedule. You know, I don't have people calling me at 9 p.m. saying they need a file the next day or whatever. And so I totally changed my business. That I became work story photography then, and only offered photography, and then video. And now I'm back full circle doing all the design and photos and videos and everything, because I have the bandwidth for that now in my life since my kids are older. So that was a big change. And I dived right into that. I had always done photography as a hobby, and I took some classes in college, but I really honed my skill for that to be able to create commercial photography. So that was a big change.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
How much has mindset affected you in your business? How much of a part of your story has that been?
It's been huge. I remember when I got my first coach, it was all mindset. And I was like, what is this? Like, I thought I was hiring a business coach here. Why are we working on my marriage? You know? And he said, it's all related. How you show up in one area of your life is how you show up in every area of your life, including your business. So I've done a lot of mindset work for sure, with a lot of different modalities and stuff, whatever they call them, to be able to just examine my thoughts. I think, have you done it a lot with like the work of Byron Katie?
Yeah, she is great. Yeah, it's great.
That was my first coach used that. And so just knowing that my thought might not be true was mind blowing to me, you know, like I have this thought about myself or someone else, and I just thought it was truth. Like, this person is mean to me or whatever, you know, that was a truth to me. And to be able to just examine it and say, well, maybe that's not true, you know, and then looking for evidence about why it's not true, that just blew my mind. It totally changed my life. So, and then I've, done a lot of other coaching tools for mindset, and it's really helped me, changed every area of my life.
That's really interesting you bring that up, because I think that idea of thoughts not necessarily being true is something that's quite foreign to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because we want to fight for it. We want to fight for that thought. No, this person doesn't like me. And you go, actually, maybe that is true, but you don't know that it's true. You don't know that it's true. All you know are the facts. And if we can separate, just being able to separate the facts from the story that we tell ourselves about the facts, and just realize that our story is not truth. It is not the facts. And just having that realization makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, for me too. So the one annoying thing about it is to notice everyone else, like, not being as enlightened as you, I guess. Like, well, that's just a thought. That's a story you made up. Like, so that at least at first was kind of annoying to me, but now I'm just like, whatever, this is my work for myself, and I can't tell other people what to do. But it was really eye-opening for me to notice, just to notice my thoughts. I do now. I'm like, well, that's a lie. Why are you telling yourself that, brain? Like, thanks a lot for that input.
So are you telling me that your friends and family don't like it when you call them out on things like their thoughts versus the actual facts, when they didn't ask for your advice? You saying that your friends and family don't like that?
I mean, I generally don't speak up, but in my mind, I'm just like, well, thanks for that story, So
I think that's the biggest challenge for all of us when we start to come upon, this enlightenment and realizing how much it can help every single person we know. And we're so excited that this can help you and it can help you. And then you realize that they don't want to hear it.
Right.
Because they're not ready for it. And you're just coming off as condescending.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Or when they turn and use it against you. I've discussed a lot of it with my husband. Like he's not really into self-help at all. He thinks he's perfect as he is, which is fine. But he is. But yeah, like I'll tell him, I'm like, oh wow, I learned this thing, and this is just a thought. And so sometimes I'll be complaining, and he's like, that's just a thought. And I'm like, oh man.
Using my own Jedi mind tricks against me. How dare you? Well, anyway, I'd love to hear before we close. I like to keep these interviews fairly brief so we can get straight to the point. But any last thoughts that you want to share with our listeners, people who are listening that say, hey, well, I love what she's saying. Any tips, practical advice, anything left that you want to leave with our listeners?
Let's see. Well, my focus this year has really been on scaling, right? Like I've got to the 100,000. What's next? So I've just been thinking a lot about that, like I've been reading a book called what's it called? Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. And it just talks a lot about multiplying your time. What can you do to make your use of time more effective and to multiply what you're able to do and the value you're able to provide. So I would encourage people to just ask yourself, like, what could that look like for me in my business and in my life, even if it's just at home, how can you get your kids on board to do more of the chores? How can you hire someone to do the things that are sucking your life away? That kind of thing. That's really what I've been focusing on this year. And it's been pretty exciting. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I love the idea of procrastinating on purpose because there's no way we can do everything. And I think that it's important to say, that's a great idea and I'm going to do it later. I think that's a wonderful thing. And if you try to do every great idea right now, you won't get any of them done. No way.
Yeah. Right. And that's been my problem up until recently. Like I have too many ideas and I'll start something and never finish it. So I've learned a lot about, putting it on, what's the thing I want to focus on now? And I could do these other things later, or maybe not. So
I love that. That's great. Well, Tanya, what's the best way to be in touch with you, to learn more about you? Where can people go to find out more about you?
Yeah, so probably on my website, it's workstorycreative.com. And, you can find my social media and email and all that stuff there. So
fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here for the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. We like to end this with a virtual fist bump. So pound it right there. Boom. There you go. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something great out of it. And most importantly, I hope that you're going to implement something that you learned in this episode, because nothing happens until you take action. If you're a 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur who's looking to up-level your network with a group of people who also have a rising tide lifts all boats attitude, then come and join our exclusive network of successful entrepreneurs by going to mtmsuccess.com/rising tide.